The biggest win of the Mark Pope era? Sure. The biggest win since Jimmer Fredette? Maybe. The biggest win ever for the BYU basketball program? We'll talk about it on Locked On Cougars.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. This is your original daily podcast focused on all things BYU sports, and today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKED ON for $20 off your first purchase. All right, my friends, what a win for the BYU men's basketball programs. They go into Lawrence, Kansas, and upset number 7 ranked Kansas. What a crazy game right off the top. I think this is the best win by far of BYU's season. It's the best win of Mark Pope's tenure as BYU basketball's head coach. And frankly, it might be the best win since one of those Jimmer Fredette wins in that magical 2010-2011 season, maybe the one that they upset San Diego State when him and Kawhi Leonard were going toe-to-toe. It's an incredible win for BYU. It's a historic win, and BYU absolutely deserved that victory. So many things were going wrong for BYU in that game at points that they could have easily decided, you know what? It's over. We're going to move on with this. The foul disparity midway through the first half, 15-4 in terms of BYU, 15 team fouls against 4 versus Kansas. Mark Pope starts ripping into the referees. I was not there in Lawrence, but as they came back from break, as I was watching this on ESPN Plus, they said they got a bench technical on BYU. Guys that were on site, Jay, Drew, Mitch Harper, etc., pointed out that Mark Pope had gotten that technical. Our good friend Blair Red may have had the tweet of the night when he says, is that the best technical foul ever taken? I'm misquoting it absolutely here, Blair, but Blair with me. The gist was it the best technical foul ever taken in BYU basketball history? Honestly, in retrospect, there was not a better time for that technical to come because the entire tone of that game changed with that technical. The referees pulled their heads out of their you-know-whats and started to call the game a little more evenly. Were there some makeup calls? Absolutely. There's some ticky-tack calls that went against Kansas in this game. But the nice part was BYU didn't have to rely on that to pull away in this victory. Jaxson Robinson and, more importantly, Dallin Hall stepped up to the plate, both of them leading with BYU with 18 points apiece in this game, and their three-point shots, I should say, were absolutely crucial to BYU getting this victory. Dallin Hall, crazily enough, played just 26 minutes in this game while being saddled with foul trouble, particularly in the second half. But when he was on the court, he was absolutely masterful. Some of the slander that has been slung that young man's way during this season is completely unwarranted, and he showed up in a big moment, in a big time that BYU needed him, and he took the bull by the horns and absolutely willed, it felt like, BYU to this victory. Incredible stuff from him. Jaxson Robinson, same type of thing. The biggest thing I think Jaxson Robinson will be able to point to in this game is the fact that he can now put that on his NBA highlight reel and say, okay, there's Hunter Dickinson over there, who is, by the way, Charmin soft. I can understand why Big Ten fans couldn't stand that dude. What a joke that dude is. But nonetheless, you look at Hunter Dickinson over there. You point to KJ Adams over there. You point to who's the other kid, the tall, skinny wing player for Kansas. All those dudes are going to be in the NBA. And Jaxson Robinson said, I went toe-to-toe with all those dudes. I can hang with them. I'm an NBA caliber player. I'm not afraid of saying that this is Jaxson Robinson's final season in a BYU uniform. He's going to go pro, it feels like, at this point. I'd be outside my mind to expect anything less from that young man. But an incredible win for BYU in this game. Bill Self and Mitch Harper pointed this out on social media. Bill Self on Monday said the BYU could make 13 threes. We could make 3. And the difference of that is 30 points in this game. What did BYU make in this game? 13 threes. Guess how many Kansas made? 3. He willed it. He spoke it into existence. And that's exactly what BYU did on their way to getting this victory. BYU has proven time and time again when they can shoot above 35% from 3, they are capable of beating almost anybody in this country. I talked last week about how the win over Baylor sealed up a NCAA tournament berth for the BYU basketball program. This is like multiple nails in the coffin that essentially say, yeah, BYU's going to the NCAA tournament. And how high is the seed going to be at this point? You're going to see BYU back in the national rankings next week. Notwithstanding, they have to obviously be able to handle their business against TCU on Saturday when they come back home. You can't afford to have a letdown like you had going into this one by losing the way you did at Kansas State. But BYU shot about as poorly as they shot all season long, 6 of 31 against Kansas State, 19.2% from the field. This game against Kansas, 13 of 34, nearly 38% on the game. And that's what the big difference was for BYU in this one. It's an incredible win for BYU. Their first game in Phog Allen Fieldhouse, a place that Bill Self and the Kansas Jayhawks rarely, if ever, lose, it feels like. I think he was 292-17 in his run at Kansas at home. Well, it's now 292-18. That is a historic, a magnanimous, an incredible win for BYU basketball to go into Phog Allen Fieldhouse and win that game. I've said this on social media as well. If you follow me at Jacob C. Hatch or on Twitter or X, I said Saturday I was up in Idaho. My sister blessed her first child, and we were up there as a family. And I was talking with my dad on Saturday when I got up there. He said, "Hey, by the way, I'm going out to Lawrence on Tuesday." And I'm like, "What? You're going to the game?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm going out to the game." I'm like, "Well, hey, enjoy the game. Enjoy Lawrence." I made the trip out for BYU when they played Kansas in football. I said I had a great time in Lawrence. Hope you have a great time at Phog Allen Fieldhouse, but I just don't see any way that BYU wins this game. Well, I got a text at the end of that game saying, "What did we talk about on Saturday?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm happy to eat crow, Dad." So an awesome win for Mark Pope and an awesome win for BYU basketball. And now it sets them up to put together, I think, what would be a very strong run to the finish here in Big 12 play. BYU's back above 500 in conference play. They're 8-7. You beat TCU on Saturday, 9-7. Then you have a tough game a week from today when I record this Tuesday night. A week from Tuesday, you have to go to Iowa State, which is going to be an equally difficult, it feels like, place to win a game on the road. But if you can do it at Kansas, in theory, you should be able to do it out there in Ames against the Iowa State Cyclones. And if you do that, then you have Oklahoma State, who you want nothing more than a payback against in your regular season finale. Could BYU finish this season on a 4-0 run? That'd be an awesome thing to see, but I'm not counting their chickens before they hatch. They've got to be able to prove that they can handle the moment. This is an ecstatic and incredible win, an over-the-top type of feeling for BYU basketball as they get that win in Lawrence. They're going to be flying high as they go into this game against TCU on Saturday. You got to be able to prove that you can handle your business and avoid the letdown. That's the biggest thing about this. You're going to have this big win, and TCU is not a pushover. They are a very, very capable team. Jamie Dixon has done a really, really good job with the Horned Frogs, and BYU has to prove that they can come off that high of what this is the win over Kansas, and be able to go into that game and not have that letdown. You have that letdown, man, that would be just kind of a gut punch after what is an awesome and incredible, just a program-defining type win for the BYU basketball program tonight. But we'll see how BYU goes about things moving forward. It's one of those games, one of those wins that all of us who watch that game are going to remember thinking back on this, because those are the type of wins that, like I said, are program-defining, program-changing type wins. What an incredible run this season has been for BYU basketball. What an incredible season it has been to this point. And the best part is, it feels like when BYU feels like they're down and out, this team, they refuse to quit. They refuse to die. They're the old Goonies thing. Goonies never say die. Well, BYU Cougars never say die. And that is an awesome thing to watch with this BYU season unfolding the way it is. So congratulations to Mark Pope. Congratulations to Dallin Hall, Jaxson Robinson, on down the roster. 6 guys outside of the 2 I just mentioned, Dallin Hall and Jaxson Robinson, scoring in this game. Nobody outside of those 2 in double figures, by the way, as well. So huge Huge win for BYU, 76-68, and they had a lot of things go against them in this game and refused, as I mentioned, the whole Goonies line. They refused to die, and I can appreciate that. I can appreciate how BYU operates. I can understand that there's some people who might have some trepidation, still considering if BYU can't hit threes at a high clip, they're susceptible to losing to anybody. That is very much the truth. But when they're on and they're hitting threes at a high level, just as equally as they can lose to every opponent, they also can blow out and win games against every opponent as well. It's kind of the knife's edge that this BYU basketball team seems to be playing on, but I do appreciate the fact that they have no conscience when it comes to letting the three ball fly. And when it's dropping, like it was dropping against Kansas, it's an incredible product to watch. And Bill Self said it after the game. He believes it is a very sustainable model for BYU. He called it NBA-esque, and he says that BYU, if they have the right shooters, that is absolutely a style of basketball that BYU can utilize to make themselves competitive here in the Big 12. And I absolutely believe that is what BYU needs to be. They need to be one of the best shooting teams, if not the best shooting team in the Big 12. They're never going to have the elite level of athletes that Kansas has or another of these top level teams in the Big 12. But how they counter that is, as Bill Self said, you hit 13 threes, speaking of BYU, they hit 3. That's a difference of 30 points in a game. And that's exactly what you can point to in this game tonight as BYU upsets the vaunted Kansas Jayhawks. All right, coming up here in just a minute, we're going to flip over and talk some BYU football. There are 3 guys they had a chance to talk to Max Chadwick about with regards to their NFL futures. We played part 1 of a conversation I had with him about Kingsley Suamataia on yesterday's podcast. We're going to talk with Max coming up next about 3 guys in Kedon Slovis, Isaac Rex, and Max Tooley and their professional futures. We'll get to all of that as we continue on right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. The best part about Game Time, my friends, they want to get you guys out to the events you want to go to. Whether it's a game like BYU just had at Kansas, so you want to go to that type of a game, you want to go to theater events, comedy, no matter what you're into, they've got the tickets for you with our friends over at Game Time. The best part is you can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you get to the venue you're headed to. All-in prices show your total upfront, so you know exactly what you're getting in terms of your overall price before you check out. And with 2 taps, your tickets are purchased. They're right there in the app, and you're on your way to the event you're going to. It's an incredible way to get out to everything you're looking forward to going to. They have exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and many, many more options. So take advantage of the options today, my friends, and download the Game Time app. Go to Game Time, download the app today. Use the promo code Locked On for $20 off your purchase. That's promo code LOCKEDON in the Game Time app or online at Game Time on their website. Promo code Locked On for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Utah Community Credit Union. Now, Utah Community Credit Union has got an incredible new feature. They've elevated their checking accounts by enhancing them with more benefits, more savings, and more online protections than ever before. A lot more. Paired with the most advanced and comprehensive mobile banking tools, Elevated Checking is a must-have financial product packed with lifestyle security and financial benefits, including free ATMs nationwide, an exclusive discount on any UCCU auto, recreational vehicle, or personal loan, an extra 10% cash back on every purchase made with your UCCU Visa Cashback credit card. And oh, by the way, UCCU's Credit Score Toolbox, a state-of-the-art set of tools designed to help you improve your credit score and enhance your financial well-being. It's awesome, my friends. It's a great way to do it. The best part is Elevated Checking is free when you do any one of the following. Use your debit or credit card 15 times or more a month, have a monthly direct deposit of $500 or more, or maintain an average daily balance of $1,500 in your account. Otherwise, UCCU and their Elevated Checking is just $6 a month if you want to take advantage of all of these features. So take advantage of it today, my friends. Visit uccu.com to open an Elevated Checking account online or stop by in person to any branch to open an account today. That's all courtesy of your friends over at UCCU. Love where you bank. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being with us here on the podcast. If you've not done so already, please consider subscribing to our Locked On Cougars Insider group. It's a really, really fun way to interact with the show. Get updates from me directly to your phone via text message and just interact with myself. It's a great way to access myself, the show, and also to support the show financially as well. I'm not going to lie about that. It's a 14-day free trial to see if it's the right option for you, and just $5 a month afterwards afterwards. And it's a great way, like I said, to have some, extra support for the podcast, but at the same time, having more access than ever before to the podcast and to myself with my insights on all things BYU. So appreciate all of your guys' support when it comes to this. All right. A couple of notes before we move along here. BYU has a number of players hoping to live out their professional futures. Now, are they all going to pan out the way that they hope? Probably not, because the NFL is a tricky business to begin with. But I had a great chance to catch up with Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus, and we had a great chat about the NFL Combine. We talked about Kingsley Suamataia. We played that portion of the conversation on yesterday's podcast in case you missed it. Hopefully all of you are everydayers and were able to catch that. But I want to play a part of that conversation now where we talked more about Kedon Slovis, obviously, who is in a Combine invite, a guy like Isaac Rex, as well as Max Tooley, who are guys that were hoping to hear their names when it comes to the NFL draft, but may have to go the undrafted free agent route. What does Max make of all three of these guys, where things stand with regards to their NFL stock? Well, here you go. Here's Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus with some insight on all three of those former Cougars. Max, I wanted to ask you about some of the other draft hopefuls from BYU. Let's start off with Kedon Slovis. He's a guy who's been invited to the Combine. There were conversations last year that he could have come out for the NFL draft in 2023, and Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl said that he would have had a draftable grade on him at that point. Where does his stock stand right now ahead of the Combine, and what do you expect from a guy like Kedon?
Yeah, I think Kedon Slovis is a guy I like. Kedon. He's always a guy that I liked a lot at USC. I even thought he was a future NFL quarterback based off what he showed at USC. Then he obviously got hurt. Goes to Pitt, wasn't really as good as Pitt. Transferred to BYU this year. Honestly, he had a 70.6 grade this past season for BYU. I don't know if he's going to get drafted. Honestly, he's probably going to be one of the top undrafted free agent quarterbacks. So I could see him, obviously making a training camp roster, playing in the preseason. Maybe he could, fight his way and make a final roster. But yeah, maybe he's a guy that, honestly, with so many football leagues popping up nowadays, like the UFL and all that, like he could be a guy that goes there and tries to build his stock up through there. So I don't know if Kedon is a guy that I think will get drafted. He could do well in the interview process. I think that's kind of the big key for quarterbacks in this whole Combine week is the interview process more than the on-field drills or anything else. Because I don't really think the athleticism stuff matters to teams that much with quarterbacks. But yeah, I think Kedon is a guy that it's going to be tough. He's right on the border of getting drafted, in my opinion. So maybe he sneaks into that 7th round. But as of right now, I think he's probably an undrafted free agent.
Now, in my radio job, my day job, we had Steve Young on in the lead up to the Super Bowl. And obviously the conversation, him being a 49ers legend, was a lot about why Brock Purdy has succeeded with the 49ers. And Steve pointed out something that I think gets overlooked with regards to quarterbacks. And he talked about the fact that in the draft process, it's hard to get what do you call it? He called it the processing ability of a quarterback to be able to understand things. And he said that Brock Purdy, he's one of the best processors of information that there is in the league. That's what allows him to succeed at the level he's succeeded at so far. Can you kind of speak to that as a guy who evaluates talent? And is there a way to find out more information about how well guys process information, especially when it comes to a quarterback?
Yeah, I think that's something that really is important. That's something that Justin Fields struggled with at Ohio State, and he struggled with in the NFL too. Like that's something that it really is a key trait that it's not as easily noticed as, say, arm strength or rushing ability or something like that. Like that is like you could pretty much tell almost immediately when a guy has that processing ability. Something that you have to like kind of a keener eye for that. Kedon's played a lot of football, and I think that helps him. I think he is a good processor. Obviously, he's played. He's played for 5 years now, honestly, and like been a starter for almost 5 years. So yeah, he's got a good processing ability. He gets the ball up pretty quickly. So yeah, I think that is something that's going to help to his advantage. I think Kedon's a very accurate quarterback too. But I just don't know if the tools are NFL level. But yeah, I think Kedon. Listen, I'm not going to call him the next Brock Purdy or anything like that, but I do think he could maybe surprise some teams in training camp and make an active roster at the end of the training camp period ends. So. Yeah, like I said, I don't think he's going to get drafted as of right now. Maybe if he has a really good combine, that would change. But just as of right now, I think Kedon Slovis is more of a guy that I would take a flyer on as an undrafted free agent more than anything else.
I know that Kedon absolutely loved his time playing alongside Isaac Rex, and Rex is obviously coming up here in the NFL draft. He's one of your classic BYU guys who served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, so he's an older prospect. He has played a lot of football in his career. He did have that horrific ankle injury at the tail end of the 2022 season against USC. Give me your overall sense of where Isaac Rex stands right now in that tight end class.
Yeah, I think the injury is a big thing, and I like Isaac. He actually his brother would DM me on Twitter a lot, just asking about Isaac and like how he can get better. And I was like, listen, man, I cover college football. I'm not going to try to tell this guy who's a future NFL player like how he can get better. I just sent him a bunch of numbers and stuff, but yeah, super cool family. Really, the whole BYU team is just I've had nothing but great experiences talking to anyone affiliated with BYU, honestly. So, but Isaac. The one thing I will say with Isaac that does concern me is that he's kind of been, his grades have taken a dip almost every single year of his career. His highest grade was in 2020 at a 70.3, and then the next year 64.3, 63.7 next year, and then 61.5 this past season. I think the injuries have kind of hurt him a little bit, and he looked like a great receiver in 2020, and then that's kind of just taken a downturn since then. And he wasn't really as good of a run blocker this year. Again, I think this is more of a guy that I would take a flyer on as an undrafted free agent more than anything else. But I do think that there's something there with him. I don't know if an NFL team is going to want to take him on day 3, especially with kind of how he's been on the kind of the downturn of his career. Usually you want to see guys consistently get better throughout their career. Rex has kind of been going the opposite path of that. So I don't think he'll get drafted, but he should also be another guy like Kedon Slovis who, is one of the top undrafted free agents available.
Now, with the transformation of the tight end in the NFL these days, you look at the Travis Kelce's of the world, you look at the George Kittles, you look at these top end tight ends, they've got elite receiving skills. Has a receiving tight end there and the receiving ability, has it overshadowed their blocking ability, or does that still very much matter in this day and age?
It matters. It doesn't matter as much as it used to, but it does matter. Now, of course, if you're a guy like Travis Kelce, who is maybe the greatest receiving threat the tight end position has ever seen, then you can live with being a below average blocker, which is what he is. But guys like George Kittle, George Kittle is one of the best blockers in the NFL. People forget that Rob Gronkowski, when he was playing, was one of the best blocking tight ends that we've seen too. So it does matter as well. But a guy like Isaac Rex, he's a solid blocker. Doesn't really mess up too many times. Doesn't make any like unbelievable blocks either. But he's a guy that I think is pretty technically sound as a blocker, which I think will help him. And he's also really good after the catch too. But I just think, again, like I said before, with everything he's done in his career and how he's kind of been, going on the downward slope, I just think that's probably what's going to scare teams off of spending a day 3 pick on him.
Last guy I wanted to ask you about in terms of NFL draft prospects is Max Tooley. Now, Max is a guy who kind of moved around multiple positions during his career at BYU. Similar to Isaac, he's an older prospect, but what have you seen from Max? What gives him hope of potentially landing with an NFL team?
Yeah, I think Max Tooley is a guy that, he's a little bit of a bigger, he's got decent size for position at linebacker at 6'2", 225, but prized to put on a little bit of weight at the next level. He kind of really did struggle as a run defender this past season, and like kind of Isaac Rex, kind of at his worst season yet in his final year, which is something that NFL teams are not going to love just by grading standpoint. At least he had a 45.1 grade this year, 72.1 in 2021. But yeah, I just think, Tooley struggled this year. I don't think he'll get drafted again. But you should get a look in it on a training camp roster right now. But I just think the struggles in run defense the team saw this year, and honestly, him having his worst year of his entire career, that's probably what's gonna scare teams off of spending a pick on him.
Now, you mentioned it earlier, the UFL, obviously the unification of the XFL and the USFL together. Is that a route that you think more and more guys who may be on the fringe of the NFL will utilize as a way to maybe, as you mentioned, trend upwards and ultimately land in the NFL? Where do you see that fitting in this football universe?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to turn down the NFL for the UFL. I think everyone's going to rather be a bench warmer. Like they'd rather be the 53rd guy or 54th guy in the roster than a star player for a UFL team, honestly, just by the money. Honestly, I think that's the big thing. I think the NFL, no matter, even if you're the last guy in the roster, you're still going to be making more money probably than most, if not all, UFL players. So, but it is an avenue. It is an avenue, and it adds another avenue for more football players, which is good. So guys that, aren't going to make a final roster, instead of sitting out an entire season, all they do is work out, they can still play football and play for another team and maybe make their name through that. And we've seen guys before in the XFL and other leagues make their names through that, like Turpin, the Cowboys returner, won the MVP of those leagues. And obviously now he's at the Cowboys, and now he's, their top returner, one of the top returners in the NFL, and also like a decent receiver for the Cowboys as well. Is going to be another avenue. Now, again, like I said, I don't think anyone's going to turn down the NFL for that league, at least not for a very long time. But I do think it's good that, you're getting more guys that maybe weren't good enough for the NFL initially. Now they get a chance to prove that hey, I am getting better in this league. Whereas if you weren't good enough in the NFL for the first place, it's really hard to break into the NFL when you don't have any tape to show for it. So, once you're done with college and you're not signed to an NFL team, it's hard for you to just say, hey, I'm working out a lot and I can make a roster that way. So it's great that the UFL is there. There's still the CFL as well, and there's still the Arena Football League. It's just more avenues for guys, which I honestly think is a great thing.
There you go, Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus. A big thank you to him for taking the time to join us here on the show. I have a plan later this week to put out the entire conversation I had with him as an individual podcast. We'll have that for you guys. We have one more portion of it we're going to play at some point this week, probably tomorrow. We're trying to figure out the schedule with regards to having Connor Pay on the show. I'm hoping to have him on tomorrow's show to preview BYU and spring camp. So if that works out, we'll push the segment later in the week. But we had a great chat about the Big 12, BYU's chances in 2024, and just the college football playoff changing. A lot of stuff from Max, and we'll have that for you guys on a future edition of Locked On Cougars, maybe as soon as tomorrow if things permit. But stay tuned for that. All right, coming up here in just a minute, BYU learned last night, in addition to a huge win over Kansas in football, well, they got a huge boost, I guess, in a way, with an official visit for a guy that I thought was completely off BYU's radar, but apparently he's right back on BYU's radar because he announced he's making an official visit to BYU. What does LaMason Waller bring, and what could he bring to BYU? We'll talk about that next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel has been with us all season, football season, and now basketball season long. The best part is they want to help you guys get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Think about it this way, my friends. It's $150 if your bet wins. You could have put money on BYU last night, a $5, just kind of toss it in there to see if they might pull off the upset, and you would have had $150 in your account today. Think about it. It's as simple as that. The best part is you can bet on all of your favorite NBA players and teams in addition to college basketball as well, with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and many, many more. You wanted to take the over-under on BYU, Dallin Hall, and how many points he's going to score against Kansas, for example. You want to take the over-under on what he might do against TCU on Saturday. You want to take the money line for BYU winning the game against TCU, or you're thinking they're gonna fade and lose after that incredible win to the Horned Frogs. You can do all of it with our friends at FanDuel. So you can get started today by going to FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot today. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today with our friends at FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen today. I want to encourage you guys, if you've not done so already, please check out our 24/7 national streaming platform from the Locked On Podcast Network. It's called Locked On Sports Today. It is available on YouTube and now also on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. It's a great way to get caught up on all the news from our local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering everything going on in the sports universe. Catch it wherever you get your podcasts, and also, once again, on the free Fire TV channels app today. All right, BYU got some good news last night in the football realm, in addition to that huge win for BYU basketball, when LaMason Waller announced that he is going to make an official visit to BYU this summer. Now, LaMason Waller, if you don't know who he is, he's a four-star prospect, according to 24/7 Sports, who has been on the recruiting scene for the better part of at least 2, maybe 3 years now. 6'2", 170 pounds, plays for Sultana High School in Hesperia, California. He's a member of the class of 2025, and he had, not that long ago, announced a top 10 school list that did not involve BYU. Now, he had some things change. He had originally planned to announce a commitment coming up in March. He has since backed off that pledge, and there's a lot of people out there that are speculating on what he ultimately may do with regards to making his decision. But BYU locked in an official visit with this young man, and he'll be coming to BYU in June to check out what's going on for BYU. Now, does that mean that BYU is a favorite to land him? I would say that's probably a little hasty to assume that, because I'm telling you, this kid's got offers from all over the country. For example, his sophomore year, just stats wise, if you want to know why people are so high on him, we're talking to the likes of Florida, Tennessee, Alabama. Just the list goes on and on about who he's been offered by. When it comes to his recruiting, he had an early commitment to Washington for a short time before backing off of that. But he is a two-way player in high school, but mainly going to be a wide receiver, at least in most people's eyes, at the college level. As a sophomore, so this is 2 seasons ago for him, he had 64 receptions for 1,057 yards and 15 touchdowns as a sophomore. Incredible numbers. And since that time, he's only continued to see his recruiting profile rise. This is a guy who was getting offers as a 9th grader. He's been on the scene for quite some time. But to hear the BYU has landed an official visit with this kid after, like I mentioned, he had announced the top 10 that did not include a BYU. He's currently rated the number 303 player in the 24/7 composite ratings. He's the number 34 player in the state of California. He's a 4-star prospect. Just an incredible thing. Yeah, he did. So he did commit. It was an early commit to Washington. He opened his recruitment up after being a commit as a sophomore. And then he had a stated top 10 of Arizona, Colorado, Georgia, Louisville, Michigan State, Stanford, Syracuse, Tennessee, Texas A&M, and Washington. Notice I did not have BYU in that mix. What did BYU do to get back into his conversation? Now, could he be just deciding I'm going to take all official visits that I'm possibly capable of taking, because there are no longer limits on where guys and how many visits guys can take visits in terms of official visits? So BYU, they got a shot. If they get this kid on campus and show him what BYU is all about, and obviously sell him a little bit on what BYU can offer to him as a football player, but more importantly as a person, because that's a big part of the BYU football the environment that BYU football espouses under Kalani Sitake. Who knows what could happen? But I think this is a notable thing for BYU to get a 4-star wide receiver on campus who, once again, he had stated a top 10 that did not include the Cougars, and BYU kind of worked their way back into the mix here, and we'll see what happens in the coming days, weeks, and months leading up to his official visit and afterwards as he decides on where he's going to go. So interesting times for BYU, but the one other note I'll make on this is it's another sign of what BYU is doing as a Big 12 program. They're getting into doors. They've got guys listening to BYU coaches that may otherwise, when BYU is an independent and even when they're back in the Mountain West Conference, etc., would have said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. I'm not interested. BYU is a power program now. They're a power 4 program, and there are young men who are going to sit up and say, okay, I've heard about BYU. What do they ultimately have? What do they have in store for a guy like me? That's going to be the fun part, to see if BYU can sell a kid like LaMason Waller a little harder on this. And if they pull off the impossible and get him to commit, that'd be an awesome addition to the 2025 recruiting class for BYU and Kalani Sitake. So there you go. That's what I got for you guys on this now Wednesday edition of the podcast. Huge win for BYU basketball. We'll continue to bask in that all week long. Like I mentioned on tomorrow's show, hoping to have Connor Pay on the show to preview BYU spring camp. Oh, by the way, BYU has spring camp availability tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. I will be out there at the student athlete building, bringing in the sights and sounds from day 1 of 15 practices for BYU. It appears, based on the schedule we've been given as a media corps, to anticipate 2 days of access a week for BYU football. So looking forward to it. It's one of my favorite parts of the year is to go out to spring camp, because there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of guys trying new positions and the like. We'll have it all covered for you here on Locked On Cougars. So do not miss an episode in the coming month and change for BYU football, because I can assure you we'll have some of, if not the best coverage of BYU football and spring camp for you. All right, so there you go. That's what I got for you guys on this Wednesday. A big thank you, as always, for your support of the podcast. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day whenever you hear and or watch this. Thank you for all of your support. Thank you for making it your first listen today, and obviously thank you to all of you who are everydayers as well. Until tomorrow, my friends, this has been the Locked On Cougars podcast.